Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 1 of the pandemic academic. Looks like we're going to be doing this for a while, so bear with me because the learning curve is steep, and we'll see how this goes. All right, so week 1, you have a couple things to do, and I'm going to show you. So you have access to all of these things through Google Classroom, ManageBag, and I think those are going to be the main 2 places. I'm going to record a video at least 1 a week, and then I can also record any one-on-ones or small groups if you need them. My office hours are still 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., and that means that I'm available to you. Based on current attendance, a lot of people aren't necessarily jumping in on the Zoom meetings, but that's when you can shoot me an email or you can request a Zoom meeting. I have them set up already, and you can be positive that I will get a response back to you within like seconds more often than not during those hours. If you email me later on in the day, then I can't promise that I'm going to get back to you as quickly as you want. Sometimes I will respond to late night emails in an emergency, but most of the time I'm trying to maintain my own mental health and sanity, as just like you guys, my world is a little crazy right now, and I'm sure yours is as well. So with grace and persistence and tenacity, let's get after it. All right, so I'm going to walk you through my PowerPoint. So let's do this. Let's see if it'll let me do it. Here we go, here we go. Oh, nope. All right, oh cool. I get to be in here too. Bring myself down to the bottom here. All right, so just for giggles, I'm calling this the Pandemic Academic 2020. Distance learning with yours truly. See how it goes. All right, first things first, week 1. Here are the things that I want you to do. Step 1 and 2, you can complete Monday or Tuesday, depending on when you would normally have me. I want you to watch this video here and go over the PowerPoint notes. You can take notes if you want, you don't have to. I always do, but that's because that's what helps my learning the best. So do whatever is best for you. If you need the verbal and the visual, take notes. If you're good with the verbal and you can just read it, but I always need that feedback, so I take notes. So watch this video and then also go over your own notes. The goal for the first step 1 is to do a quick write prompt in response to the question of how do stressful situations often reveal the best and worst in people? And we're going to use this free write, this quick write later as a foundation for a story that we are going to write later on. And we're going to start writing actually before the week is over. So our question that we're trying to answer is, how can narratives help us capture moments and feelings in history? And I thought it was important to include things that would help us reflect and process kind of what is going on. Everything is crazy right now. And I think it would be an injustice to just create lessons that try to pretend like we're not in the midst of a global crisis and things are just the same as always. Writing helps us process, writing helps us cathartically, therapeutically, all of those things. And it's really important that we continue to engage in that. On the flip side, let's not overwhelm ourselves. So I'm going to give you some stuff that's a little bit more lighthearted or slightly different. Step 3 and 4, you're going to create one personal entry into your notebook. I'm going to show you how to set those up today. And then also take your quick write and use it to plan out your story. And this is what you're going to be turning into me, is a story chart. It's small, it's compact, it's simple. And that's going to be the one thing that you turn in for sure that's going to be assessed. Everything else, optional for your soul, for me, for all of us to continue talking and processing. So here are the things that I want you to remember about a fictional narrative, which is where we're going to start taking our writing and start creating our own little narrative. So the first thing is a clear and consistent point of view. Your writing should make sense and it should come from the same perspective. So if you're telling a story about something that happened to you and you're telling it from your own perspective, you use a lot of first-person narratives. So like we, you're telling it as if you're the person that experienced it. The other is called a third-person omniscient. So it's imagine if, for lack of a better phrase, if God was telling the story. They did this, they thought this. Like a third-person omniscient means the person where the narrator is above it all. They can see other people's thoughts, hear all the things that are being said, move from place to place, and they're telling a story like they're watching from above. Or the first person is going to be, you're going to be telling the story from just you. Just so you have your limited perspective, and both are great. You can pick whichever one you want. Well-developed characters, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to go into a ton of detail. They just need to have enough detail about them in order for them to feel real. So don't waste a lot of time overly describing. Don't control your reader. When you overly describe, sometimes it's because you're super self-conscious and you don't want your reader to get the wrong idea. If you don't leave enough room for your reader to kind of create their own imagination, their own interpretation, they get bored because they're not doing anything. Effective use of dialogue. There's nothing worse than dialogue that does nothing, that goes nowhere, that shows nothing. So make sure that if you're using dialogue, it's to move the story along. And in one writing class, I was told that a lazy writer uses only dialogue to move everything around. Make sure you also have that narrative form where you as an author are describing things and processing and thinking as well. But use dialogue, use description, use reflection. All those things are important. 5, sensory language and precise descriptive details. So sensory language is anything that has to do with the senses, what you see, what you hear, what you can taste, what you can touch, what you can smell. All of those things are sensory language. And when you describe things like that, like the smell of chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven, a lot of your readers will be able to imagine that themselves, and that helps bring them into the story. And then finally, a conclusion that brings the story to a satisfying close. And I don't mean this as a satisfying close doesn't mean that the reader likes it. Sometimes you're going to try to end something, but you're not necessarily going to like the way it ends because it might end on a cliffhanger-ish, or maybe not. Don't end it on a cliffhanger, but you might end it in a way to where the audience can assume what happens, but you don't necessarily do the full ending that tells them exactly what happens. If you look at the old man at the bridge, the reader can assume what happens to the old man, but even though the writer doesn't really tell us what happens to him when the enemy does get to that bridge and he's still there. So something like that. Next up is your notebook setup. So if hopefully you brought your notebooks home. Obviously, a lot of you probably didn't. It's okay. They're going to be a little different. During this time, I want you to set up a notebook. It can be digital. So if you want to just do a Google Doc, that's just one stream of consciousness, you can do that. If you want to do a hard copy, I'm doing a hard copy, you can do that as well and just take pictures of things. The first page should be something fun or meaningful. So I'm going to show you mine real quick. Let's see. Oops. Share. Stop share. That's what I want. Okay. So I'll show you mine. I found a notebook someone gave me a long time ago. So I'm going to use it right now. And I did this very quickly, but I'm calling this the Corona Chronicles, the thoughts, wonders, and worries of Miss Robinson, true-ish stories from the pandemic academic of 2020. And I put a quote on here that always makes me think from one of my favorite writers, Ian Forrester. He says, "How do I know what I think until I see what I say?" For me, writing is a place where I process. It's where I'm a lot more honest sometimes and about what I'm thinking. And when I see my most honest thoughts, it gives me a chance to think about whether or not I really want to keep those thoughts. Because every once in a while I see stuff on the page and I'm like, ooh, I should probably fix that or change that. Or I see something on the page and I'm like, I like that. I'm going to keep that. It's up to you. So your first thing is going to be a pre-write. I already messed up, but luckily I had these super snazzy little mustache stickers. Heyo. Make it colorful, make it yours. If it's a digital, you can do the exact same thing. So I've got the date. Again, you just need to complete these during the week. It's up to you. And again, I'm not going to tell you necessarily what to write in your notebooks every time. I'm going to give you some prompts, but for the most part, I want you to have the freedom to write about what you're feeling, what you're thinking. So I'm going to be a little prescriptive in the beginning, which means I'm going to kind of tell you what I want you to write, but then I'm going to let go, and I want you to be the writers of your own destiny here. So the first one is your first writing prompt is, how do stressful situations often reveal the best and worst in people? And I started out, I haven't finished this yet, but because this is on a time crunch, here's what I started with. Toilet paper. Who would have thought it would be toilet paper? And you can guess where that might be going. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Let's see. Crushing it. There you go. So that's your notebook. Again, your first free write that I want you to write about. There isn't a limit, but you can write as much or as little as you'd like. Please, please let this be a free space where you do not have to worry about punctuation, sentence structure. You can write in bullets if you're really struggling. I do not care. I just want you writing. Okay, Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, we will be bookish. So I want you to find a book. I want you to read a book. I want you to write about a book. That's it. On Wednesdays, you update your reading log and you write a reflection about what you're reading. This can be anything pertaining to the book. It can be a summary. It can be questions. It can be connection to your own life. I am already predicting that I am very likely going to be creating a page of just quotes from my book, because my guy that I'm reading right now has a lot of descriptive language and he's got a lot of really cool ideas that I'd like to kind of retain and hold on to. Just so you know, there are a couple, I've linked them on the title page or on the template for this week's lessons. There is a link that a friend actually just sent to me called Open Library. If you have books at home, fantastic. If you don't, then that link will be there for you. And it's free books that I think you can download for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm not sure. In many different formats. You can get a PDF, you can download it to your laptop, you can get e-publisher. If you have iBooks on if you have an iPhone, I know that you can get iBooks on here, and so e-publisher would work for that. Kindle, it gives you a lot of different options, and I already went looking through there, and there are already like 6 books that I want to read. But while I have you, I thought I would do a quick little book pitch just to get us started. So the book I'm reading currently is called A Gentleman in Moscow. It's a slow read, but it's a beautiful read. A man is sentenced to house arrest in Russia during the 1920s, post-revolution, after the execution of the Tsar and his family, which is kind of like the king. And this guy was a count, he's an aristocrat, and instead of killing him, which was an option, they decide to sentence him to house arrest in this fancy hotel. And so while the world around him changes, he's trapped there, and apparently there's going to be something with a little girl that he's going to have to save. I don't know, sounds crazy. I'm about 160 pages in. I really like it. Slow, but it's an escape. And oddly enough, this guy seems a little bit more trapped than me. And that's actually how my Wednesday bookish prompt started. And so I put the title of my book, what page I'm on. Don't worry about counting it, just right where you're at. And I said, I am fully transported into another world right now, which is, which is exactly what I need. Today I had to take a break and read while I ate lunch. What's funny is that even though I feel trapped and overwhelmed, I wonder if I have more or less freedom than the count. And I'm going to keep going with that because this is literally what happened today. There's a lot of changes. Everything feels super overwhelming, and I could feel myself getting a little anxious of just, how do I do this well? How do I support my kids? I miss you all. I genuinely mean that. And so at lunch, I was just feeling that anxiety creep up, and I was like, I need to go take a break from this world. And so I'm going to go hang out at a fancy hotel in Moscow, and it helped. So now I'm making this video, kicking butt, doing my thing. Read a book. So you can pick whatever it is. I brought some books just in case you want to check them out. The Hate You Give. I know it's a movie on HBO. No, I haven't watched it yet. Well, yeah, probably. Hands down, one of my favorite books I've ever read. So good, easy read, very pertinent to what was happening in the Black Lives Movement, what is still happening, issues today. Young narrator, she's your age, she's badass. She has to deal with code switching. So she, grows up in the hood essentially, but she goes to this really fancy private school and witnesses the murder of one of her best friends at the hands of a cop. And you watch her process, and she's incredible, empathetic, and you just fall in love with her, and you love her in the midst of her struggle, and you watch her process kind of, what do I do? And that's great. Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, also a good movie. Read the book first. If you have any issues at all with, if you ever feel socially awkward and like you don't fit in, this is your best friend. Story of my life. Another random one. This one, Silent Patient. Woman is found after having supposedly murdered her husband and then doesn't speak again for like 6 years. And this is told from her perspective from before the accident and his perspective, his being a therapist, and you're trying to figure out, did she do it? And there's a twist in here that I was not prepared for. I won't say it's like the most amazing writing, but that's okay. It was distracting, it was wonderful, it was artsy, it was cool, and it shocked me. Not kidding. So Silent Patient. You can find that for free. The Martian. Got a lot of like trapped weird theories or styles here. The Martian. Guy gets stranded on Mars. What's he gonna do? So good. I skipped over some of the math stuff because I don't care about astrophysics. My brother would be really mad, but you know. But really funny actually. If you were ever trapped on Mars, you'd want to be trapped with this guy because he's hilarious. Last one. I will have more. Beneath the Scarlet Sky. Probably one of my favorite books I've read this year. It's about World War II, Italy, a young boy. He's 18 or 19, I think, when the war really kind of hits Italy. I'm not gonna spoil it. Let's just say there's a lot of things that happen to him. He becomes a spy. He helps smuggle Jews over the border. He does a lot of amazing things. Falls in love. Everything goes wrong. Everything goes right. Definitely, I read this super fast. I know it's like really big, but it's an easy read for a nerd like me, and I just devoured it. I was sitting on a beach, and my mom was like, "Don't you want to read like a fun, easy book?" I was like, "No, I have to keep reading," and I just kept going. So this was my favorite book that I read this year. So there's some ideas. If you have questions or you want help finding a book, hit me up because I'm like that guy that helps people. It's like a librarian. Ask me, tell me what stuff you're interested in. I can recommend books. I've read a bunch. If you have book recommendations, I would love to figure out a way to get you guys on this thing, but we'll see how this can go. I just want you to read something for fun. Read something to distract yourself. Read something to escape and spend some time in another world, because I don't know about you guys, but the inside of my house is starting to feel small. Okay, that's the PowerPoint. Here we go. Almost done. So it's bookish. So that's what we're doing on Wednesdays. You are just gonna have at it. You can write summary, again, connect to your own life. That's kind of what I was doing. I was like, this guy's trapped in a hotel. I'm kind of trapped in my apartment. Same, not the same. We'll go from there. And then, so steps 3 and 4, you create one personal entry in your notebook. Sky's the limit. Write about whatever you want. If you need some prompts, shoot me an email. I'll send you 3. If you are like, I got this, people ask me like, how much, how long? Aim for a paragraph. I would aim for time. Try to set somewhere for 10 minutes each morning. Write it out. Do something. So minimum of one personal entry into your notebook. You don't have to. By the end, what's going to happen is you're going to be sending me summaries of your entries, or you're going to send me summaries of like what themes are popping out. So as you create these, you're going to be going back to them and thinking about them. So make sure that you have them in there, because while I might not be collecting them this week, you're going to need them for what's to happen later on. Here's the thing you're going to turn into me for sure, hands down. Any of this you can send to me. I'll put it up on Google Classroom, because I love to see you guys, your writing, your reading, what's going on. Just check in. Miss you so much. But is create a story chart. And here's what that's going to look like. So here's an explanation of a story chart with examples from Old Man at the Bridge. Exposition. That's the part of the beginning of the story where it establishes the setting and characters and the conflict. Conflict is the main problem. So for example, from the Old Man at the Bridge, you have, during the Spanish Civil War, an old man sits by a bridge while others evacuate. The narrator stops to talk to him. You know the time, you know where you're at. You're in Spain during a war at a bridge. People are evacuating, so you get the general context of what's going on. Rising action, so that's as things start to get crazy. Describe the events that increase the conflict and tension. So as that story progresses, you realize the narrator wants to get the old man out, but the old man is just too tired. He's too tired to move, and so he kind of, instead of admitting that completely, he just kind of take that time to think about the animals that he'd left. But really, there's more going on. He's realizing he does not have the strength to save himself, and he hopes that those animals get out. climax, identify the point of the greatest tension. This is when the bad guy's almost going to win, your hero's almost going to die, maybe your hero does die and rises from the dead and some like weird Harry Potter stuff. The old man tries to get up and move, but he has to sit back down. He can't get up. He is worried about the animals he left, but the reader essentially knows that he's probably not going to make it out of there. The resolution is where you tell how the conflict is or is not resolved. Sometimes we don't get the happy ending we want. That's okay. That's life. A lot of people don't like those stories, but I think they're important for us to read anyways. They tell how the conflict is or is not resolved, and the conflict in this story doesn't resolve. The old man gives up. The narrator leaves him to face the advancing enemy alone. And that's what we call a bit of a tragedy, or a tragedy completely. The reader is left to kind of guess, but we can assume what's probably going to happen. So don't leave it completely on a cliffhanger, but do your own. So what I've created, oh, that's not for you now. What you're gonna do is create your own story chart based on your free write from the beginning of the week. So your free write about how stressful situations bring out the best and worst in people, you're gonna create a story chart based on what you wrote. So you can either focus it in on the virus, it can be fictional, it can be non-fictional about what's happening with all this, and it can be inspired by it. So for example, I could write a story about trying to go out and look for toilet paper. Whatever, go for it. Or I could write it from the perspective of one of the hoarders, or the perspective of somebody judging one of the hoarders, which is me. Y'all can figure it out in terms of where you feel your heart taking you. You are going to fill out, don't know what's that. Well, I've attached it on Google Classroom, and you can figure out how you want to do that. So I highly recommend writing it in your notebook. Again, does not matter what your notebook looks like. This is going to get more decorated as the weeks go on. You can use, I got an old notebook here that's like half filled. You can use that. Got another yoga notebook. Didn't really use it enough. I got tons of extra pages. I also have this other tiny little guy. So up to you. Just make sure you're writing somewhere. And that's it for week 1, everybody. Again, office hours, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That guarantees an automatic response from me, super rápidamente, or you can always send me an email after hours and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Take care of yourselves. Please stay in open communication with me. You remember how I work. You communicate, you tell me how you're doing. That helps me gauge how far to push you and how to let off the gas. Some of you guys need to step on it a little bit harder, and some of you guys need to give yourself a break. You're the only person that can determine what you actually need right now, okay? So if anybody hasn't told you today they love you, I do. Thinking about you guys a lot, and find something good to read, okay? All right, don't forget to upload everything by the day that you would have me. So if you're in 5th period, that's Thursday, and if you're in 8th period, that's Friday. Make sure those things get uploaded to ManageBack and Google Classroom. We need them in both places. Sorry, not sorry. Okay. Happy reading, y'all. Love you. Bye.